Shabbat Shalom. What we've seen this week in our nation's capital was shocking, unacceptable, deplorable. I don't know how many adjectives I can use. Seeing those images of seditious insurrectionists invading our sacrosanct state house felt like a most intimate violation. I once saw a seminary student open the Torah, unscroll its parchment, and then leave it open, and he walked away and left the Torah unattended. A precious thing, just available and unguarded. The invasion into the capital reminded me of that naked vulnerability of something treasured being breached. A violation of space, yes, but it was also a violation of national symbolism that we hold so dear. Seeing our elected officials crouched and covered in gas masks, watching the criminal buffoonery escalate to an international embarrassment, it's sad and infuriating. In a year of loss after loss after loss after loss, on top of it all, we just lost our national dignity. I want to make 3 points about what happened. Point 1, human beings are deeply leadable. Our minds are malleable. People are impressionable. The invasion of the Capitol was evidence of that to me. When powerful people use their platform to repeat lies over and over and over again, large numbers of people will believe them. I won the election, I won the election, I won the election. The election was stolen from me. It was stolen from me. It was stolen. It works. And it doesn't just work on the fringe. It works. Now, I've spent the last several weeks reading Holocaust memoirs. And I can tell you that no one has paid a higher price because of the lead ability of humankind than we have. How do you think you get neighbors to turn on each other? Answer, like all change, it happens through pressure over time. That's how Nazis persuaded, say, a shuttle of Ukrainians to turn on their Jewish neighbors, by repeating lies about us, by creating fake science that we were animals, by spreading lies that we were dirty, disease-ridden vermin, by blaming us for the economic woes. And slowly, decent people start to think, maybe that Jew driving that truck, is that the truck I should be driving? Maybe that Jew is the reason I don't have more money. Maybe that Jew shouldn't be living there at all. We hear so much about the camps, about Auschwitz and Dachau and Birkenau and Theresienstadt, about these unspeakable places. But the majority of Jews, I'll remind you, the majority of us never even made it there. Instead, we were rounded up and killed from our homes with the help of our neighbors. We were thrown off bridges on our way home from work by someone who owned the bakery next door to ours. The names of our children were shared with the SS officer by the butcher next door. We were made to strip off our clothes and to walk onto a plank to be shot over an open grave minutes from where we lived, often with help from the locals. People that knew us, people whose children played together, people who did business together turned on us. And that is because something within human beings allows us to be led. If a demagogue grabs power, watch out, because people will follow. Point 1 from this week's insurrection, human beings are deeply leadable. We are all impressionable. Our minds are all moldable. You and I are not above this problem. Maybe we think we are because of our education. Maybe we think we're above it because of our geographic location, but we are not. Influencers influence us. Advertisers sell us things and we buy them. Leadership leads us. Point 1, leadability is a part of the human condition for better and worse. And these insurgents were not randoms. They were followers, which leads me to point 2. Point 2, guard your mind. It's the most precious thing that you have. Judaism, above all else, revolves around this concept of the power and freedom of the human mind. Don't let others control or dictate your mind. Think for yourself. The original idea of Judaism, after all, is monotheism. It's that a thing is not God. A wooden pole in the middle of the desert is not worth worshiping. A stone statue is not sacred. But did you ever think about why? You know, we were victims of physical slavery in Egypt. Slavery of the body with our Egyptian taskmasters hovering over us. But idolatry, the worship of things, is intellectual slavery. Our exodus from Egypt was about freedom from physical slavery, but it was also about the dangers of servitude of the mind. If you think a statue is a god, what kind of power does that statue have over you? If you think a thing is a deity, what imagination could you possibly have? But if you take all of that away, if you allow God to be invisible, ineffable, then that opens up a world of imagination, creativity, freedom of thought. It's exactly why the Passover Seder, where we celebrate our freedom, by law, must start with a question. The Jewish way is to question. A question is a tiny act of rebellion. It's something only a free person would do. Slaves don't ask questions. We know we are all leadable, and so we must hedge against that tendency. To do this, guard your mind. Don't allow yourself to be part of any type of mob rule, whether it's physical or intellectual. Let me specify what I mean. There are many responses to this cowardly attack on our capital. But joining an equal and opposite type of mob, whether it be a mob of ideas or a, God forbid, a physical mob, just on the other end of the spectrum is not a good idea. Let me tell you a story to explain what I mean. In the 13th century, a scholar named Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg had an exceedingly intelligent daughter named Rachel. She learned Hebrew and Aramaic. She could recite entire passages of Torah by memory, but she knew that the greatest intellectual challenge of all was the study of Talmud. She begged her father, "Please, teach me, teach me." After months of pleading, her father said to her, "Very well, but just so you know, it's very difficult. It requires that you not only read and memorize, but also that you think." Now listen carefully to this, he went on. 2 men working on a rooftop fell down through a chimney. When they landed on the floor, one had a clean face and one had a dirty face. Question, which one of the men went to wash his face? Think about it. Do you think you know? Rachel thought about it a lot. Her first instinct was, of course, the one with the dirty face went to wash it off. But then she thought more and she got a big smile on her face. She said, "Father, I got it. The one with the clean face must have gone to wash because he looked at the other one with the dirty face and said, 'Oh, my face must look like him.' And the other man looked at his friend with the clean face and thought, 'Oh, he must be clean.'" Rachel was so pleased with herself. Rabbi Meir smiled at his daughter. "Good thinking," he said. "But to study Talmud, you must think a little harder." "Why?" she asked, crestfallen. "Because," her father answered, "if 2 men fell down a chimney, how is it possible that one of them would have a dirty face and the other would be clean?" Always look for the question behind the question, he said. This is how we study. We cannot be passive receptacles of the news or of our political leaders. It's never served our people particularly well. We cannot let any one stream dictate our thoughts. That is the Jewish way. Guard the sacred responsibility to really think. When you feel pressure to jump on a bandwagon, hesitate. When you hear group think, flinch. Always ask questions. Trust the people who deserve trust. And don't just question the questions. Question the premise. Question the question behind the question and to the left and the right of it. Question yourself. Question those who align with you and those with whom you disagree. Thinking for yourself does not mean checking boxes on some sort of political checklist to make sure you're in perfect alignment. Truly thinking for yourself, examining the ideas is the deepest expression of your Jewish identity. When these people, with a herd mentality, pierced the windows of the Capitol building, I perceived in them a complete loss of discernment, analysis, respect for truth, and pursuit of knowledge. Be the opposite. It means guarding your own mind so you can parse the complex streams of thought, culture, media, content, politics that are constantly coming towards us. Second point, guard your mind. It's your unique gift in the world. Third and final point, white privilege. I have been told by liberal people that there is no such thing as white privilege, that it's a concept fabricated by professors in ivory towers, that it's an invention of the media, that it's a product of my spoiled millennial wokeness culture. Let me be crystal clear. I believe that what happened this week was a grotesque display of white privilege and a result of a white supremacist mindset. Let me ask you, what would have happened if that had been a crowd of Muslims swarming the Capitol? What would have happened if that crowd who broke windows, looted the State House, bragged about it, posted on social media, was a mob of African American men? What do you think would have happened then? White supremacy is real. Some people really do think they are better and more entitled and more of a person than others. It's horrifying, and it must be fought against with every ounce of our being. There are historians that can tell you how this happened, how we cultivated an entire culture based on the fabrication that one skin tone is better than another. There are politicians who can point to how our culture exacerbated, enabled, and encouraged by elected leaders. And there are clergy, like me, all over the country, whose obligation it is to shout from our pulpits that white supremacy is a grave moral wrong, that degrading another is one of the most dreadful violations of nearly all theologies. Compassion for others not like us is Judaism. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the rest is commentary. Remember the widow, the orphan, the stranger, for you were strangers in Egypt. Judaism is about compassion between people who are different, not superiority. Racism is real. Privilege is real. And yesterday, Wednesday, we saw those two things in practice. Conclusion. Despite it all, it is not lost on me that we are a country moving forward. We are getting more stable leadership, and very soon. This week was also the week Georgia elected a black man who grew up in public housing, whose mother picked cotton as their senator. This is the week that Georgia elected a 33-year-old Jewish man who is the son of immigrants and grew up in close proximity to Holocaust survivors as their senator, and I could not be more proud. I watched as the two new senators tapped elbows in a moment of unity and pride. This is the same year we elected the first woman to the vice presidency, the first Black woman, the first Indian American woman. Vaccines are being distributed and will be distributed faster and better. The assault on the Capitol was a culmination of 4 years of relentless darkness and compassionless leadership. Can you even imagine what could happen if we spend the next 4 years in the spirit of compromise, compassion, and positivity? What if we aggressively cultivated hope, equality, and justice? Where might we be then? In closing, I offer you this traditional prayer for our country. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights of your Torah that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony, to banish hatred and bigotry and to safeguard the ideals and free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country. May this land, under your divine providence, be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom. And together we say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.